This is the Fuji GFX100RF. And this camera is kind of built for someone exactly like me. I am a daily X100 shooter. I've shot probably close to 200,000 images on the system. I'm a full-time professional photographer, and I really like high resolution cameras and images because that allows me to punch in and create the composition that I like. That's just kind of my style of photography. And Fujifilm very kindly sent me this camera for a week so I could put it through its paces. And I'll be honest, I thrashed this camera because I wanted to understand the experience of what it's like to hold the camera and how it makes you feel as a photographer, its ability to capture images, and then also the resulting images. Because we can talk about specs all day, but they mean nothing. It's these three things that are the only things that matter. And so I shot 2,500 images on this camera, which is a lot for a medium format camera. And so we did sunrise to sunset in Brighton and treated it very much like a travel photographer because I'm documenting my day and everything that was going on. I did 4 days of pure street photography in London, where we did easily 90,000 steps over the course of that. And I also took it on a client shoot. So I've tested it in as many different scenarios that I could, considering we only had a week with it. And so with over 0.5 terabytes worth of data, I've got a pretty good understanding of the important things to know about this camera. And I'm not sure whether I'm ever going to get sent a camera again, because this is 100% my own thoughts. And I want to be as honest with you guys as I can humanly be. And yeah, so I'm going to tell you who I think this camera is for. I'm going to tell you exactly what I think. I'm going to tell you the couple of things that annoy me about this camera, as well as answering the major concerns that people have and whether they are actually relevant to this camera. So let's get into it. So let's start with how the camera feels in your hand and then how it starts influencing you as a photographer, right? This camera, I'll be honest, feels a bit more like shooting with a full frame body, like a Sony or a Canon, because of its size and weight compared to the X100. And so the X100 is super light and feels like a toy, whereas this feels much more like a proper camera. And so there's pros and cons to it. With this, I will take loads of shots that I don't think are going to be worth anything just because I can. But you don't really do that with this camera. But this camera it felt like it encouraged me to go out of my way to get involved in a scene and to really create a connection between me and the subject. Which is weird because I don't really have that with any other camera. I was more than happy to not get in people's faces. That's obviously a bit antagonistic, but to really be obvious that I am taking a photo of you and I'm not scared of that, which is weird, and I kind of enjoyed it. Not only that, it kind of makes you shoot a little bit like a film photographer, and so hear me out on that one. And so the reason that I say that is the autofocus and probably more the processing speed of taking such big files means that it's fast and slow at the same time. And so other medium format cameras, their autofocus, and trust me on this, is so slow and so unreliable. That is not the case with this. I was blown away with how unreal the autofocus was on this camera. It genuinely surprised me. I was kind of expecting it to be a little bit, but it was fire. But I think where the issue is the processing speed of writing the files. And so let's say, for example, that I'm walking in this direction and I've got a subject that I'm either walking past or they're walking towards me. I can confidently, and it's weird saying that with the camera like this, if I've got my eye up to the EVF, that one image will be perfect. It will nail the focus and everything, and it is honestly bellissimo. But the recycle time of that is quite slow. And so I always shoot in single shot and with single servo focus, so it's very accurate. And I don't really like burst mode, because burst mode, if you're walking past someone, obviously the focus distance is changing and you end up having out of focus images. So I like to spam that button. And so the reason why, linking back to why it feels like film, is when I'm taking a photo, I get one shot. And so I have to really consider what I believe to be the decisive moment is. And that's quite a unique thing with modern mirrorless cameras. They didn't really have that sort of pressure and that constraint. And I think that pushed me to be a more considerate photographer rather than just purely throwing the kitchen sink at it, right? And yeah, if you decided to stop and take your time, absolutely perfect. This camera is built for that. But it was incredible being able to nail at least one photo and get it perfect. And so in that sense, it pushed me to be a better photographer. This EVF, genuinely incredible. I was surprised with how good that was. And I suppose this links into the whole, but the X100 series is 35mm equivalent and 35mm is greatest. That was my perspective too. Like, I've got so many 35mm lenses up there because 35mm is me. I love it. That's how I see the world, right? And when it was like 28mm, I was like, really? But with the EVF and with this little toggle for the frame lines, I can be shooting, essentially looking through an optical viewfinder and then getting the frame lines of 35mm up. And it was incredible. And the screen feels big, and I felt like I was really able to connect with the scene and to be more expansive with my view of the world. It sounds so weird and so woo-woo, but honestly, I was very pleasantly surprised. And yeah, I know I said I wasn't going to talk about specs, but the lens is sharp and crisp and beautiful and does an absolutely fantastic job. And that really helped me to create better compositions in 4x3 though, because that's something that I did notice, is that when trying to crop down to more traditional aspect ratios, more usable aspect ratios that clients want, the 4x3 sensor gave me too much latitude kind of up and down, and so all of my images felt very spacious and beautiful. But then when I cropped in to these other aspect ratios, I was too tight, and that I think is something that you just have to get used to. And there's probably someone screaming down in the comments saying, yeah, but you've got this dial here that can change the aspect ratio and like bah, 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 and hit that dislike button. And interestingly, it doesn't work when you're shooting in RAW, which I found to be pretty baffling. So let me show you. Okay, so I've got the frame lines up for 35mm. I'm clicking this and nothing is changing, right? It's because it's in RAW. And so then go into image quality, change it from RAW. Let's go super fine. See how it changes? That's not very helpful. And this is something that can easily get fixed in software. But that really annoyed me, because anyone that's buying a medium format 100 megapixel camera, dropping 5 bags on a camera, you're going to be shooting in RAW. You don't want JPEGs, brother. And I was baffled, because it's like, right, if I'm a serious photographer, I say serious photographer, do whatever you want. But most people are going to be wanting to shoot in RAW, and because there's the most latitude in the files, etc. But this, it just naturally isn't set up for that. And it's like, yeah, maybe I could be shooting in JPEG plus RAW, but at that point, it's like the files are so big that you have to be so considerate of how much data that you're writing, that if you're shooting a JPEG and a RAW file, but you're never going to use a JPEG and you're only going to use the RAW. You're just wasting data, which feels very backward. If anything, it should be the RAW files that you can see the aspect ratios and move around in. But this is something that can easily get changed with a software update, so not too stressed about that. And the digital teleconverter, I think, is okay. I think that it is slightly, not gimmicky, but it's more of like a get out of jail free card than it is being properly useful, because I think that if you've got a 100 megapixel sensor and you're cropping in using only a tiny portion of the screen or tiny portion of the sensor, and you only have, I think it's like something, don't quote me on this, but like a 20 megapixel file at 70 millimeter, it's like, cool, you don't really have any of the upsides, but it's useful in terms of, oh, I'm miles away and something really interesting is happening in the distance, I can crop in. And that's where I think that this camera is exceptional. But would I shoot at 70mm all day or whatever it is? Absolutely not. And so the people that are going to be buying this camera are going to be shooting in RAW, and so the editing workflow is so important for what we need to achieve, right? And I can honestly say these images look insane. You can push and pull them so much. If I underexpose something, it didn't matter, just smash it up. And honestly, I loved the output of this camera. Just phenomenal. The file sizes are nuts, and I've got a M1 MacBook Pro with the M1 Max chip with 64 gigabytes of RAM, hella SSD storage, and it did start to chug a little bit, but I think that I'm not using the camera in the way that it's intended to be used. And so I think that if you're editing a few files that are absolute bangers, it'll be no problem. If you're trying to edit hundreds of images, that's when it starts to really slow everything down. So now let's talk about some of the things that people thought were going to be limitations with this camera, starting with IBIS. Just hold your camera a bit stiller. Like, for real, I didn't see it as being an issue. I was more than happy to shoot with slower shutter speeds, and to be fair, like, the ISO performance on this is pretty good. And so yeah, maybe if you're a nighttime shooter and you like doing super slow shutter stuff, then yeah, maybe IBIS would have been helpful. But yeah, if you're using it in the day, you're absolutely fine, and do not worry about it. And big complaint number 2 is that it's only an f4 lens, and I'm gonna sound like a Fuji shill, but I think that was the right choice, because I think if you've got anything wider, you're making the lens even bigger, you're making the whole thing bigger. And realistically, if you're dropping 5 bags on a point and shoot camera with a medium format sensor, you've got to be a serious photographer, because you need fast memory cards, you need lots of storage, you need to have a computer that can handle those files, and so you've got to be quite serious about it. And if you're shooting everything at f1.4 or with the Leica Q3, shooting everything at f1.7 or whatever it is, don't hate me, but you're probably not that serious of a photographer, because there are so many other ways that you can help your subject stand out against the background, that you don't just need a shallow depth of field. And so I think that they made the right choice by going with an f4 lens. I thought it was going to be more of an issue. It's really not. And I think that if that's something that really matters to you, this camera is absolutely not for you. So now let's get on to 4 things that are super picky, but things that kind of annoyed me and probably could be fixed with software. So the touchscreen on all Fuji cameras annoys me so much. So every time I went to put my eye up to the viewfinder, my cheek would touch the bottom left corner down here, and my focus point would yeet down to the bottom left corner. And that was so annoying, because if I'm putting my eye up to the camera, especially when shooting street, I am about to take a photo, and I've probably considered where I want my focus point to be, so I can go in, boom, instantly take the photo. As soon as I did that and the focus point went down to the bottom left corner, you're then having to spend time messing around with this little joystick to get it back across, or double tapping in the middle, which we're going to get onto in a sec, which is annoying. So all it needs to be is just like a latency thing where the EVF is almost more sensitive, or the EVF sensor is more sensitive, so it picks up your eye and turns off the touchscreen faster. Alternatively, you just turn it off in the settings, which is what I did, but I ended up having to do that with every single Fuji camera that I own. So, a little caveat. And I'll be honest, this joystick is a bit annoying. So in the old X100s, it's like I'll show you. It's like a little stick, right? So I can just poke it in whichever direction I want, and I know it's going to move in that direction. And then it's so easy to double tap to reset the focus point into the center of the frame. With this, however, I felt like it's a little stiffer, and it may be just because it's a new camera, but it felt more, it wasn't as like responsive. And I feel like you have to have your thumb in it to then be able to like really decide which way to move it. And it sounds so picky, and it is. But yeah, even when I'm like tapping in the middle to reset, sometimes it would go, oh, you want to go left. And the focus point would just move left when I'm trying to reset it. And that slowed me down. But as we're going to get on later, that probably isn't going to be an issue for people who this camera is built for. And then to counter all of that out, I think this camera looks gorgeous. Wow. Especially with this square hood, I think it looks so sick. And lots of people came up to me and was like, yo, like, what is that? Even like, in a couple of the like shops I went to, people would go, that looks sick, bro, like what is it? That's obviously quite a cool flex. And so who do I think this camera is for? I think it can be very easily segmented. If you like fishing as a style of photography, this camera is perfect for you. All of the little nuances and considerations and things that annoyed me were only when I was hunting. If you don't know what that is, if you're a fisher, you like to find a scene and work the scene. You like to go, oh, I like this, I like this, I like this. I'm going to stay here and wait for the right moment. Or I'm going to specifically go to this spot because I know the light looks cool, etc. Versus hunting, where you're just constantly running around the place, constantly on the move, just papping away, just taking quick snapshots and moving on with your day. And all of the annoyances that I had were in the hunting side of stuff, where you needed the camera to be super fast and you needed the settings to be right and the touchscreen to not be messing around. But that isn't a problem if you are shooting in a fishing style. If you're a methodical shooter, this camera, I think, is perfect for you. I don't think it's for, if you're thinking, on a whim, should I get it, should I not? Genuinely, the X100 series is probably going to be the best camera for you. But if you're really serious about it, I think that you will love this camera. And I kind of love it too. But I think that my style of photography very much blends between the two, and depending on what day, and if I'm shooting with Mike, because he's very, very much a hunter, then I think this camera is probably not as well suited to that as the X100s. But if you are predominantly a fisher and you like going hunting every now and then, this camera will do a fantastic job, and I'm kind of sad that I'm giving it back. And so those are my honest thoughts about this camera, and I think I'm gonna miss it. I don't think it's quite right for me, but I do love this camera. I do think it's sick. Yeah, if you want to learn more about how I shoot street photography and different ways how you can take better photos, check out this video here. And until next time, see you in the street.